Hi there, and welcome to I'll Knit If I Want To. I'm Andrea Mowry of Drea Renee Knits, and I was just sitting here getting ready for this little chat, and I decided, well, I can get ready and chat at the same time, right? So I'm just playing around with some needles, but I thought I could just get it going. Today I am wearing my Strya cardigan with my Wilder gown. So this is a dress I sewed. I guess I could stand up and it's okay. It landed on a pile of yarn. Oh, happy Friday, everybody. Okay, so this is the Wilder gown. It is a tiered dress. And then this is the Strya cardigan. I think this is actually what I wore in the photo shoot. Oh no, I didn't. Maybe I might have worn a different tiered dress now that I think about it, because I don't remember it having the cute little collar. I don't think it did. I think I wore this dress in the Feel Good shawl photo shoot. Anyways, let me just get everything put back together. Definitely through my iPad as I was standing up, which has all of this week's questions on it. But yeah, so I'm wearing the Strya cardigan. This is knit up in ampersand fibers. This was the Instafriends knit along sweater for last year, and you may have noticed if you've participated in that knit along, oh geez, how many years has it been going? They did the Weekender, Nurtured, Heartstrings Crop, I think Junction, and the Strya cardigan. I think this is going to be year 6. That's crazy. Time is just going by so fast. You have to slow down a little bit. But this year's sweater is all done and ready to go, and it's actually going to be my last pattern release of the year. So that is coming up in just like 2 weeks. So definitely stay tuned for that. I'm really excited to show you the sweater for this year. It's very cozy. I think I've told y'all before that I don't really allow myself to wear my pattern. Sorry, I'm just trying to decide on a needle here. I don't really allow myself to wear a pattern until we've done the photo shoot, and a lot of times until it's even been released. We did the photo shoot for this one a little while ago, but I don't know. I guess it's a little weird little paranoia thing. Like, what if something happened and we needed new photos and I already somehow stained the sweater or something? So I always like to keep them really neat until the big day. Anyways, I'm just rambling because I'm sitting here screwing needle tips onto a cord. So maybe we should jump into some questions. And yeah, how's your week going? I hope you're having a good week. And let's see what y'all want to talk about this week. So the first question is a follow-up question from episode 87. Also, of course, I realized right before I hit record that I have a neighbor who it sounds they're like grinding wood chips, or like putting a tree into a wood chip grinder. A wood chipper, is that what they're called? Just makes me think of the movie Fargo, which is also my dog's name. So I hope we won't have any of that sound in the background, so let's cross our fingers. But follow up to a question from last week. You mentioned wanting to pick only one pattern to knit from, sorry. Let's try this again. It's one of those days where I'm like, I should really just restart, but I'm just gonna keep on going. You mentioned wanting to pick only one pattern to knit forever from each category. So what would those be? So last week I got asked if I could only knit one of my patterns forevermore, what would it be? And I said the DRK everyday sweater. But I was like, man, I wish I could pick one from each category. So this person was like, well, what would it be? So I did mention my DRK everyday socks. Those would be the socks I would knit forever and ever and ever. I already have so many pairs of them, and they are 100% one of my go-to knits. So that covers socks and sweater. If you didn't see last week's episode, again, that was DRK everyday sweater. And let's see, how about a shawl? Shawl, I would probably, I'm looking at my shawls. I almost feel like I could just riff on a shawl and not even need a pattern, it would forever and always involve garter stitch and brioche. That is my go-to happy shawl place, is those two ingredients. So I guess I could pick from like Marley, Brioche-alicious, the Attune shawl, or I guess that's half fisherman's rib. Cinnabar. But then I might even say something like the Inclination shawl, because that just has such a nice rhythm and you can just keep going and going and going. And I think it would be easy to adapt to like different colors and yarn weights and stuff like that. So I think it would definitely be triangular, whether it be asymmetrical triangle or regular triangle. I just definitely grab those shawls the most, as far as what gets the most wear out of all my shawls. So yeah, I think I would go either Cinnabar or Inclinations. I know that's kind of cheating. I don't know which one I would end up picking if I could only have one. I would want some garter stitch in there, and Inclinations doesn't have any garter stitch. It makes me want to design a triangular version of Brioche-alicious, because I think that would then be my go-to. Okay. What else? So I guess, are there any other categories that people want to know about? Cardigan. Sorry, y'all. I'm still kind of getting over this little bit of a cold. I just have a little tickle in my nose. How about cardigan? Let's try a cardigan. This is a little bit of a labor of love. I do love how classic it is though, and definitely goes with lots of things. I actually want to make a DRK everyday cardigan. I've had that on my list for a long time. So, although I would actually, you know what I might say for cardigan is the Douglas Cardi. That would probably be my go-to. Maybe I should write a whole book of my go-to. Like forever. If I only got to knit one of this pattern, this is what I would knit forever. All right, let's go on to the next question. I would love to hear your forever pattern. If you could only pick one, what would yours be? All right. What is your favorite brand of knitting needle and why? Do you prefer interchangeable sets or solid single size and length needles? If you prefer the latter, how do you store them? So I have chatted about this on here before, but I feel like it's a good one to touch back on. I'm so sorry, I just have like itchy nose right now. This is when it becomes problematic to not be able to like edit my own videos and whatnot. I mean, I'm sure I could figure it out. I have had to in the past when I did like an interview with Jillian Moreno. That video, our Zoom froze halfway through and I had to kind of figure it out, but I don't know how anybody does it quickly. It took forever. Maybe my computer is just not up to the task, but like I kept running out of memory everywhere. And yeah, there are reasons why I do not edit these videos. It's just, this is me and this is what you get. But I have had a lot of people ask about needles. This is kind of a recurring question, so I feel like it's kind of nice to touch back on it. So 90% of the time I use ChiaoGoo knitting needles. Let me grab that case. Oh, I thought it was right here. What did I do with my knitting needles? Okay, I found it. So, hi there. Thanks for joining me on Andrea's knitting needle chat. So most of the time I use ChiaoGoo. They look like this. They have that kind of iconic red cord. I only use interchangeables. I don't even know if I have any of my fixed needles left. I have a few times, I do like to pass on crafting supplies when I realize I'm no longer going to use them. So once I got interchangeable needles, I just realized I never went for the fixed needles anymore because I just like carrying the one case. So I actually have hosted some like learn to knit little groups and stuff before, and then I would just say you don't even need to bring anything, and I would create little bundles of like, here's some yarn, here's a set of knitting needles, just to get people started making, you know, something small like a headband or a hat or something. So I 100% use interchangeable. The reason I use interchangeable is because it has everything I need. So especially pre-pandemic, I was traveling a ton. I was traveling once to twice a month to teach. And so I liked to be able to grab my knitting needle case and know that I had anything and everything I needed. Sometimes I would bring multiple designs with me. Sometimes I would have to start a new design while traveling. And it's like, I just wanted to know I had everything I needed. I didn't want to have to be like, shoot, I need to go find a size 4 32-inch knitting needle somewhere. I also am a magic looper. I prefer to do small circumference knitting, magic loop style. Again, it really comes to, I have everything I need for it. I don't have to carry a set of double pointed needles. I actually repurchased some double pointed knitting needles the other day because I was like, you know, there is something I really love about DPNs, but I still default to this, especially when I'm not at home. I'm always going to default to magic loop. So ChiaoGoo I love for the following reasons. They have a pretty nice pointy tip. They have a very smooth join from cord to tip, and their cord is lovely. I actually would say this is the largest selling point for me on these needles and why I have stuck with them the longest. I've tried quite a few different brands of interchangeable knitting needles. I have had some break here. I have had ones that get like a bend or a kink in them. And I've had ones that don't have a smooth join here. And so, especially when you're using finer yarns, like fingering weight yarn, you have to push it up and over a little lip at the join. Really drives me bonkers. It really slows you down. So ChiaoGoo has just kind of hit all my boxes as far as I just love using them. Even with a really long cord, it doesn't stay coiled up, and that is huge to me. So I'm making such a mess. It's kind of bad, y'all can't see it. So even with this long cord, like, do you see how it just opens up? There's none of this tight little coil. That really drives me bonkers. So yeah, and I've said it before, I'll say it again. I highly recommend for any newer knitters out there, if you feel like you are really starting to get into knitting and it's going to be part of your life for a while, and you like to knit different weights of yarn, and so you need different size needles, especially if you want to do like sweater knitting, stuff like that, I highly recommend interchangeable needles. They are more expensive right out the gate, but it will save you so much money in the long run. Like I remember in the beginning buying different fixed needles for different projects, and they can run anywhere from, I don't know anymore, it's been a long time since I bought fixed needles, but I'm sure you could probably find some for like $8 and then all the way up to like $25 easily for one needle. So ChiaoGoo, I can't remember exactly how much they cost anymore, but you can do half sets or full sets, which come anywhere from a US 2 all the way up to 15, US 15, which is a 10 millimeter from a 2.75 millimeter. I also have, they have little sock sets. So I have gotten those. Oh, you know what is interesting? My sock needles are the only fixed needles I think I still have, because I do. These are sock needles, also ChiaoGoo, but they are fixed, and it was because it was before I got any sock needles, and the smallest that the interchangeable set went to that I had gotten was to a size 2, and I needed 0s and 1s for my socks, and so I bought a couple pairs of those. So that is like the only fixed needles I have left. Since then, I have tried, they have these cute little shorty tips, and some people love these. I find the people who love them the most tend to be English style knitters, and so I found to get used to them, I would do English style, holding my yarn in my right hand, and that was more comfortable and got me to like these better. Now I can do them continental, but I just think personally, the way that we hold the needles in the yarn, it is more comfortable if you hold your yarn in your right hand for the little shorties, but I'm sure there's plenty of continental knitters out there who like them. But so you can even get those as an interchangeable. And that comes with sizes 0 to 3 or 2.0 millimeter to 3.25. And they come in 2 little different lengths. I don't know if you saw that, but these are like 1 inch, and I think these are 2 inches, the needle tips. And they come with a few different cords. So I especially like those. I don't tend to use them quite so much for socks because I'm just such in my rhythm with socks with my magic loop, but I do enjoy them for a sleeve, especially if I'm doing color work. It is so nice not having to jump the gap between needles when you're doing color work in the round small circumference. So I do like that. They do also have sock set. I think they call it a sock set, but this is a 000 to a 1.5. Or that's 1.5 millimeter to a 2.5, but these are still long tips. Those are still, I think, 4 inch. So you would still need to do magic loop if you were doing small circumference knitting, or you could do the 2 at a time as well, the 2 at a time needle trick. So can you tell that I could just talk about this literally forever? Like I've probably been talking about this for 10 minutes and you're like, yeah, sorry. Hopefully you find this bit interesting. Okay. Anything else about ChiaoGoo that I feel I should share? I don't think so. I think we're good. I love them. I really have 0 complaints when it comes to ChiaoGoo. They have been great. Now, the other needles I do use. So again, I do use these most of the time. I mean, really most of the time. But, and I think this is kind of common for newer knitters, but maybe I'm just going off of my own experience. I really wanted wooden needles when I first started knitting. There was something, they seemed like a little more modern or elegant or quiet. So I do like a wooden needle still to this day. And there are times where I feel like there's something about the relationship between the wood and the fiber that like I like to just like slow down, and it's more of a sensory experience for me. So for those, I really like the Lykke needles, Lykke. And so that's my go-to if I'm going to use a wooden needle. But I do have a complaint. The join is fine, works great. I have heard of people having a breaking issue, but I think that's been resolved. I've never experienced that. But here is where I will complain. Just a little bit. I don't like, can you see this? I don't like when a cord coils. I don't want, you know, like it would take a decent amount of knitting with like a sweater on here to kind of help that loosen up. And I don't like, you know, when you cast on, you're already trying not to twist your stitches and you're going to join in the round. And now you're dealing with a spirally cord on top of it. So I love that depending on the set you get, a lot of times the cord will match the set, which I think is, I love it. Like I have the indigo set here. And so it comes with a blue cord and blue needle tips. And then I also have some of the pink ones. I actually have one put together right here. It's time for me to do like a studio tidy up. Like I love, these are actually like looks wise, probably my favorite set. Cause I just love that. Those little hot pink tips and their little blush pink cords I think are so cute. But the cords are not my favorite. I'm going to be real honest. I wish they were threaded differently so that I could actually use my ChiaoGoo cords on these needle tips for when I wanted that experience. But I was at Port Fiber the other day for Port Spinners. So Port Fiber is one of the local yarn/fiber shops here in Portland, Maine. And it's amazing. My friend Casey owns it. I highly recommend if you ever are traveling to Portland to stop into Port Fiber because it's really a fantastic shop. It's where I learned how to spin. And they host little sit and spins every like first and third Friday of the month. So that's really fun. And they also have some good yarn and knitting needles, great like magazine and book selection too. So I was in there the other day and they were like, well, do you know about the new cords? I guess I don't know how new they are, but new to me for sure. And I wonder what they call these. Oh, they don't have a specific name. I thought they did. Well, anyways, they're like a 360 cord. So the cord and the needle tip can spin separately from each other. So you twist it on, but then you can actually spin it all around. And I feel like the cords are a little more flexible. I feel like that spiral could loosen up a little bit more than their original cords. So here's my hope. I'm gonna try out the new cords because they're pretty inexpensive. They're $3.99 for a cord, which I don't think is too bad. So I'll be really curious to see if I like these cords better, because then I would use these more. It's really the cords that kind of hold me back sometimes. It's totally fine for something like a hat because a 16-inch cord doesn't spiral, so it's fine. It's just when I get to the longer ones, sometimes for a sweater, I don't want my cords to do that. So wow, there is my TED Talk on interchangeable knitting needles. I can't believe we're only on like the second question. Just chatty Cathy today. So the last thing I'll say, I do get asked a lot about needle case. I do have a favorite. I've talked about it many a time. It is the Maxwell from Magpie Fibers. It is just so hardy. I have traveled, this is my original. So I do have one for each case. Wood needles and metal needles, which is solely justified by the fact that this is my job. But I just love them. It holds all of my cords. It holds notions. If I open it up, you can see. So it holds my needle tips. I always have a crochet hook or two because you just never know when you might need one. All my cords. Some of my fixed needles. This is definitely like my fullest one because it also has like those little shorty tips I showed you earlier. You can't really see them because they're dark. And then I love that it has this zipper pocket. So this is where I keep all of like my cord locking ends. So these that you can throw on a cord when you need to take the tip off. I always have a row counter in here, a couple T-pins. Oh, and what I always have to mention when talking about interchangeables, because one thing I hear all of the time is, let's just see what else I have in there, that people have struggled with their needle tip coming untwisted. I never have that problem, and it's because I lock it on. This just happens to be a Chow Goo bit of rubber, but seriously, next time you buy broccoli, if it has one of those wide rubber bands to hold the stalks together, take that off, dry it off, and throw it into your notions bag. It will work just as well as this. But all you do is once that needle tip is in to the cord, I'm just looking for my little T-pin again. All I do is put my little T-pin through the lifeline hole at the base of your needle tip. Why doesn't this one fit? What size needle is this? I'm gonna grab a different one. That almost looks like the hole. Oh, you know why? I switched needles, sorry. The hole's on the cord, not the needle tip. I was like, that is so weird. Did I get like a lemon needle tip? Whoops. Okay, so the lifeline hole's on the cord here. Can you see that? See how it's that little hole? So you just put it right through there. And so then I would have my needle tip on. I guess I can actually show you. And then you use the T-pin to give yourself kind of like a break. And then you just twist and lock it. And you will not be able to twist that off again without then using your little rubber band if you've tightened it enough. So that's what I like to do. And I never have a problem with it coming untwisted while I'm working. So there's the tip on that. Maxwell is the case I like to use. I have seen those new, I guess I don't know how new they are. They're new to me. I just saw them for the first time a couple months ago, the thread and maple needle binders. Have y'all seen those? They look really pretty. But having invested in my Maxwells, I cannot justify another needle case. But that would be another cool one to check out is the thread and maple. But I love my Maxwells. You can also, mine's really full, but If it wasn't so full, you can actually roll it like 3 times and it's more of a burrito roll. And it wouldn't be this flat if you didn't have quite so many, fill it up quite so much. But yeah, anyways, that concludes my TED Talk on needles. All of my opinions that I have. So, goodness, let's move on, shall we? Okay. And just to like throw it out there, my most used needle, I have realized, because I feel like I never have enough of these needle tips and cords, is a US 4. What size is that in millimeter? 3.5 millimeter, 32-inch cord, which would be 80 centimeter length, I believe. That is my most used needle. So, just in case anyone wanted to know. I'm like, wow, I really use these a lot. Okay, let's move on. I recently finished a Weekender Light out of my handspun. Yay! And it has absolutely lit a fire under me to knit more of my handspun yarn. What would your advice for the next sweater or cardigan pattern I could knit with handspun? I prefer fingering weight to sport, but open to anything. Thank you for a continuous flow of wonderful patterns to knit. Well, thank you. I am so excited for you. Every time I knit with my handspun, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is all I want to knit with. So I'm just so excited for you, because there's just, knitting with handspun's really unlike anything else in my opinion. So I would recommend my DRK Everyday Sweater. I have knit out of my handspun and could knit it again a million times. And I would also recommend Nurtured, although that is a heavier weight sweater. That's more of a worsted, but it takes so well to handspun yarn. That was actually the first handspun sweater I knit, was Nurtured. But anything. I saw the most beautiful handspun Illuminate ever. It was so gorgeous. So yeah, I mean, I would say anything can be knit with handspun, and I can't wait to hear what you choose to knit next. And I have another Weekender handspun question here. Hi Andrea, I'm taking part in the Spin It to Knit It Weekender Knit Along. I spun some beautiful 2-ply BFL in 3 different colorways in a fractal. They kind of describe how they're doing their fractal. But they're having problems with knitting the front and back separate, because what it's going to do is it's going to cause their colors to not line up anymore because of the fractal spin. So they're considering to add stitches to where it says to divide for the front and back, continue working in the round, and then steek for the sleeve opening. How would you go about doing this? How many stitches would you add? Did I mention this is my first time steeking? Any other tips would be fantastic. So I have a couple things here. One thing to consider, I have a few things. Number 1, I don't think that you have to worry about the fact that your colors are no longer lining up between front and back, because you won't ever see the front and back of your sweater at the same time. You're gonna see the front or you're gonna see the back. Having knit a lot with like spin cycle yarns, and they are that slow color shifting, really similar to a fractal hand spun yarn, things just don't always line up. Your sleeves aren't gonna match either. To me, it's okay. I think that's kind of the beauty of it being no other sweater. Even if you tried to spin the same exact yarn again, you wouldn't be able to knit the same exact sweater again. They will always be individual and unique, and I kind of love that aspect of it. So I do think you could think about the fact that once that sweater is done, the front and the back are going to be separated from each other by your sleeve. So it's not going to be this jarring look to it. I think it would completely be fine. But I also love challenging yourself and seeing like, I kind of want to do this way. I would be happiest if the front and back of my sweater was perfectly lined up, especially because I can see how you might feel like, well, that's fine if the front and the back don't necessarily match, But now I've used up this yarn for the front. I need to go knit the back, and I'm at a different color in my yarn that I'm gonna have to reattach to knit the back up, and maybe being worried about some color discrepancy there, for which I will remind you, if you did do a center pole ball, you could always see if one end matches better than the other end. But let's say you're like, nope, I'm gonna steek this. I think that's great. So what I would do is I would cast on 5 extra stitches between the front and back. And I'm just visualizing. So I think what I would do is, just like we do when we're casting on underarm stitches for like a top-down sweater, obviously this one's bottom up, but I would just go ahead and probably use backwards loop cast on to cast on 5 stitches. And I would put markers so you know exactly where those stitches are. And you're just gonna cut down the middle of that. I would reinforce. You can just do a simple crochet reinforcement, or if you wanted less bulk. So that is the only thing to think about, is you are going to be adding some bulk to the top of your sleeves. So the way a drop shoulder sweater works is part of the sleeve is actually knit with the body, because we generally knit a drop shoulder sweater wider than our actual body, and so that hangs down a little bit and creates part of the sleeve. So where you cut that steek open, you're going to have a little flap on both sides that you will turn to the inside of your sweater. Also, just really I'm sorry, my bangs are like falling on my face today. I have not had my hair done since last spring, and it's getting to be time. Anyways, so just something to consider is that you are going to have to kind of tuck that under and seam it down. So you're going to have a little bit more bulk right there than you would otherwise. So you also might want to consider doing a sewing machine reinforcement, if you have a sewing machine, where you can just run a zigzag stitch over the top to reinforce. And I have done that. I actually really like that. What did I just do that on? Oh, my shift again. I did that. I was like, I want to do the sewing machine, because the crochet can add bulk. It's not horrible though. You could absolutely do crochet. Absolutely. So, yeah, I would just do 5 stitches. One thing to keep in mind is that you knit the body of the weekender inside out. So when it comes to steeking and picking up those stitches, just remember that your purl side's the right side out. So once you cut, you're going to sew your cut steek edges to the inside, which will be the knit side. But then you do pick up and knit the sleeves. The sleeves are stockinette. So body's reverse stockinette, sleeves are regular stockinette. But I think it'll work great if you want to go that route, and I can't wait to hear how it goes. Definitely pop back in and let us know. Also, one other thing I just want to give you a heads up to think about, there is short row shaping. So that will kind of play with your colors a little bit too, because you're going to have to work back and forth, and then on the other side work back and forth to create that shoulder shaping. So just keep that in mind, because then your colors won't be perfectly lined up at that point. Okay, I hope you find that helpful, and good luck. All right, last question. Hi, Andrea. I notice you frequently use the long-tailed tubular bind-off in your patterns. I do. I love it. It's like my favorite. I did in this. This is all long-tailed tubular bind-off. You can see. Makes for a very pretty bind-off. I always had a really difficult time doing this bind-off until I was introduced to the 1x1 invisible bind-off, which seems a lot like the long-tailed tubular bind-off, but on one needle. Are these the same thing? Is it possible to do the long-tailed tubular bind-off on one needle? For some reason, I get all confused when I add a second needle. And finally, do you have any tips to put down and pick up your knitting while doing the tubular bind off? I find I never have enough time to do it in one sitting. Yay, toddlers! And always have a hard time knowing where I left off when I pick it up again. So, full disclosure, I've actually never done a 1x1 invisible bind off. So I don't know if they're similar or the same. I just have no idea. So sorry I can't answer that part. But what I can answer is that you absolutely can do long-tail tubular bind off on one needle. So for anyone who's maybe listening that has not done a long-tail tubular bind off, one of the preps for that bind off is typically you have all of your stitches, which are arranged as a 1x1 ribbing, and you move all your knit stitches to your front needle, and then on the spare needle you put all your purl stitches. So like as you're going along your ribbing, you just keep moving like knit stitch to my front needle, purl stitch to my back needle, and then you'll have them all lined up. Then you use Kitchener stitch to bind off. So I used to do it that way, and then one of my friends was like, you can do Kitchener stitch on one needle, and I was like, what? Because when you think about doing like this button band for the Straya cardigan, this is all one long bind off. You bind off this entire thing at one time. That's a lot of stitches to separate onto 2 needles for your Kitchener stitch. So it's just so much faster and easier to do it on one needle. So I have a tutorial and I am linking it below. Regardless of if you are on your iPad, a phone, or a computer, you should be able to get down into that description box. Someday I will attempt to watch a video on all of my devices so that I can actually properly tell you how. But it is there. I do have some people be like, oh, I'm watching on an iPad and there's no description box. I'm like, there is. I don't know why they have to change the formatting depending on the device you watch it on, but it is below. And that is where I put any links I mention or like the patterns I'm wearing that day. It also has the link to where you can ask a question. So that's all below. Usually what you see is something along the lines of the title of the episode, and then it'll say something like show more or show description or something like that. And you just tap on that and it opens up the full box and you can scroll through and see all that information. I also write out the questions that I'm answering and all that good stuff. So I will put the video tutorial for Kitchener stitch on one needle below. And for the second part of your question, knowing where you are, basically, it really just depends whatever stitch is in front. If it's a knit stitch is your first stitch closest to the edge, I would kind of check where your yarn is at that point. But if you have a knit stitch leading, then it should be time to take your tapestry needle with your yarn and go into that first stitch knitwise, and then the second knit stitch. So you're going to skip the purl stitch in between and go into that one purlwise. Then you're going to reach around back, go into the purl stitch purlwise, take it off, and then the next knit stitch knitwise. It'll make a lot more sense in that video. But basically just see, do you have a knit stitch on the edge next to your needle tip, or is it a purl stitch? And that'll kind of determine what you need to do next. I hope that makes sense. All right. I think that's everything. This feels like a long one. It is a long one. So happy I hit record. So yeah, next week, kicking off Wednesday night, we have the fall knit along challenge. We are going to try and knit up a pair of bear paw socks in a weekend. You want to head on over to my Ravelry group for all the details. You can also post on Instagram. We are using the hashtag. Do I have it on here? I don't think I do. I will put it on in the notes for you what that Instagram hashtag is. I think it's just Bear Paw Knit Along Challenge. But there's some pretty amazing prizes, including a 1-year subscription to the Farmer's Daughter Fibers Sock Squad, which I think today or tomorrow, that's going on sale real soon. So if you've never checked that out before, the Farmer's Daughter Fibers does a sock yarn subscription box that is amazing. So I couldn't believe when she was like, we'll give a year subscription. So that's a really exciting prize this year. There's some other great ones too, including a really cute embroidery kit for like sweater ornaments and just fun things like that. So I hope you'll join us. That is just in a few days really. And yeah, I think that's it. So I hope you have a great weekend, and I hope to see you back here next week. Bye.